What's going on YouTube? It's TH back again with another video, and today we are doing another 2-round NFL mock draft with trades. Excited to bring this your way, have some new interesting ideas, especially talking about some of the risers and fallers post Senior Bowl, so we'll talk about that a lot throughout this video. But if you want to know more of my thoughts, I gave out a video with 32 Senior Bowl winners, and there's definitely a few more guys to add to that list, and I talk about them throughout as well. So if you want more Senior Bowl content, that video is already up on the channel, and you guys get the gist of it. You guys know what we're looking for here. Like and subscribe if you're new and enjoyed today's video. Comment your thoughts down below, especially I want to know your thoughts, your favorite team. Did you like the picks that I gave your squad? And I am doing it a little differently today. Obviously no sidebar, so I'm just down in the corner. And I kind of want to go back to the PFF mock draft simulator. I don't know, just change up the look a little bit. I normally use mock draft database is mock draft simulator. But today I came over to PFF because there was one thing in specific I wanted to do for today's video. And I wanted to put Justin Fields on the Las Vegas Raiders. And if you've been around the channel, you know this is one that I've been talking about a lot, a good bit. But honestly, I can't lie to you that, here, let me just move me real quick. I'm just going to do a second rounder for Justin Fields. Just that's going to be the move. But yeah, I felt like this was going to be what happened. Like, I felt like this fit made a lot of sense and it'd be something that like Antonio Pierce would want to do. And initially when it was going to be Cliff Kingsbury as the OC, I was like, yeah, absolutely. Background working with Kyler Murray. Like, this is a guy who could totally tap into Justin Fields as a runner. Perfect. But then obviously that falls through, and then they hire Luke Getsy. And I think Getsy's a pretty solid run game designer. Like, I think he actually draws it up pretty well and has a pretty efficient run game. And I think his time in Chicago kind of bears that out. No pun intended. But the pass concepts are just brutal. I can't remember what game it was this year, but somebody posted the pass chart, and it was just all screens or all curls basically on either sideline. No passes over the middle of the field. Like, he's gonna have to kind of reinvent himself there. But that being said, I could see where Antonio Pierce is prioritizing the run game side of it. So, I don't know. That's my one drawback to this. I really like the idea of Fields going to Vegas. I like that more than Atlanta. I have not really been thinking about that in a whole lot of these mocks because I kind of feel like that's more of a Kirk Cousins spot than it is a Justin Fields spot. So, I'm going to stick with my gut here and say Fields to Vegas. But I totally acknowledge the Luke Getsy of it all kind of clutters this up a good bit. But anyways, with that taken care of, that pick will become important with something we do in the second round. So let's go ahead and start. Chicago, obviously, after trading Fields, we're going to go Caleb Williams here. I'd personally go May, but that takes us into the number 2 pick. Let's go Drake May 2. And then let's go ahead and waste no time, and we'll go Jane Daniels here at pick number 3. I do think it's going to be quarterback 1, 2, 3. And then right now, this feels like the most consensus order that we'll find, with the occasional mock, including mine from a couple weeks ago. Flipping Jaden and Drake, which I think is totally plausible. I wouldn't doubt that. And I even thought about having Washington move up to 1, especially with the Cliff Kingsbury hire in DC. Feels like maybe they do that, but at the same time, Washington has holes at offensive tackle, corner, edge. Can they really forfeit one of their 2 second rounders, pick 36 or pick 40, another top 100 pick, and next year's first rounder? Because that's what I saw floated out there as the potential move up compensation. That'd be giving up a top 50 pick this year, next year's first, and another top 100 pick this year. This team has too many holes to forfeit those assets. So if they have anywhere near a close enough grade from May or Daniels to Williams, I think they'd be wise to stick and pick. But who knows? Maybe next week or in 2 weeks, whenever I do my next mock, we'll have a mock with Washington move up to 1 and take Caleb Williams. Because it's worth thinking about, because it's certainly on the table. But I just think they have too many holes to do that. But anyways, quarterback 1, 2, 3. I do think this is the most consensus order. Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4. And look, if you want deep analysis, we've talked about these picks so many times. So sorry, I'm kind of breezing past it. But if you're watching this video, you've been keeping up with mock drafts. You're into draft season at this point. All these picks are nothing new to you, and they all make sense. The Bears, Washington, New England, they need a franchise quarterback. Arizona, they're going to stick with Kyler. Marvin Harrison Jr. just makes everyone else look that much better. And then I think ultimately they'll let Hollywood Brown walk. I do think that's ultimately going to be their play. Then we get to the Chargers. I continue to love the idea of Malik Neighbors. Rome Odunze is definitely in play here, especially if they do move on from Mike Williams. I think replacing one big body, physical, win on the outside type of guy with another in Odunze definitely is appealing. And I hear some of the Brock Bowers stuff, but I almost just feel like Harbaugh's more inclined to just draft Barner, the Michigan tight end who's 6'6", 250, kind of has more prototypical inline tight end, frame. Not to say I definitely think Bowers can play in line, don't get me wrong, but he is not your prototypical size. He's just strong enough to make it work. So I could just see where Harbaugh's looking at Barner in the 4th round, and that's his tight end of the future. So I don't know. I still think receiver is probably the lean here over Brock Bowers, but we are going to have Bowers in the top 10 because he is a special talent. Wouldn't shock me if they do end up going that direction here. I just like the inside-out flex of Neighbors, depending on what they do with Allen versus Williams. And ultimately, I think they're going to have to use Quentin Johnston as more of a, I'm not saying he's Rashee Rice, but like how the Chiefs have used Rashee Rice, especially early on, they weren't relying on him as a separator. He was more of a yards after the catch guy. Johnston did that at a really high level at TCU. So if he becomes kind of an extension of the run game, Neighbors becomes that big play threat. Keenan Allen does a little bit of everything. I really like the look at that wide receiver room. Plus, you add Josh Palmer, another guy who does a little bit of everything. Then we get to the Giants, and I floated this out last week. And look, we live in a time where it is hard to find like consensus agreement on anything. And it's kind of weird. Feels like there's 2 QBs this year that, for the most part, there's consensus on. So, like I said last week when I had the Saints take McCarthy, that was pre that restructure. At this point, the Saints are kind of sitting with Derek Carr for the next 2 years. I can't see where they move on from him. Maybe next year they draft a guy and stash him, but it's not going to happen this year. The Giants do have the opportunity to do the same thing with J.J. McCarthy, where you draft him, and if you felt like, hey, he could use another year at school, well, you just let him sit behind Daniel Jones. He has that mobility that Dable likes with Allen, as well as Daniel Jones. And also, like, it feels like most of the attachment to Daniel Jones is with ownership. So this could be the kind of, we're going to draft J.J. McCarthy, and if Jones doesn't work out, ownership is then willing to kind of move on, reset, and then who is an easier sell than the reigning national championship quarterback, right? I think it was Albert Brenneman who tweeted out earlier this week that, for the people he's talking to, it's probably going to be J.J. McCarthy at QB4. And if I'm honest, that makes a whole lot more sense to me. As much as I think Penix and Nix are better, J.J. McCarthy is 21 years old, has a ton of arm talent, reigning national champion, all that sort of stuff. He's probably going to go ahead of the 2 older quarterbacks who have, question marks in their past. One with medical, one with not looking good at a previous school. So I do think J.J. McCarthy's going to be QB4, and I think this is kind of the opportunity for the Giants to draft that future guy. It adds a little bit more longevity for Brian Dable and Joe Shane, saying, hey, we just drafted a quarterback. You kind of have to give us another 2 years to see what he's all about, while still also kind of appeasing ownership. Like, hey, if Daniel Jones plays well, there's nothing saying we have to turn it over immediately to McCarthy. We can kind of keep him around, or if he stinks it up, this is kind of the last year of guaranteed money. Next year it becomes really easy to move on from Daniel Jones. So I think this is ultimately certainly something that's on the table. And I can see where Dable and Shane, especially coming from Buffalo, look at a toolsy, traitsy kind of McCarthy guy. He's my QB6, but there's a lot of upside there, and even I can't deny that. I can see them wanting to buy into that and have that contingency, let him sit for a year, kind of do the, you could have gone back to school thing, but you're just going to be with us instead, and let him sit behind Daniel Jones for a year. And yeah, kind of multiple points there. Yeah, I think McCarthy's going to be QB4, and I definitely think this is live for the Giants here. As much as, Roma Odunze would be an awesome fit here, but want to change it up. We did Roma last time. Let's go to the Tennessee Titans here at 7. This is an easy one. Joe Alt. I've done this 1,000 times. Tackle's a huge need, and I think Alt at left tackle, Skoronski at left guard, Tajay Spears going to be a happy dude run at left side. Also, bodes really well for Will Levis's blind side. Then we get to the Atlanta Falcons here at 8. I'm going to go Jared Verse. If everything I heard is true from last year, had Verse declared, the Falcons were going to be pretty big on him. And you still have the same GM in place. The front office is the same. They just have a new head coach. And even that head coach coming in, I think Jared Verse is definitely someone that Raheem Morris could latch onto. So this could be the dude at the edge position, right? You insert a 10-plus sack a year type of guy, makes Arnold Ebiketie look that much better. And they're still trying to figure out the inside too. Calais Campbell, obviously an aging vet, and then Grady Jarrett's up and over 30. So they could be in play here for the interior move. Maybe this is kind of where you start dipping your toes in the Byron Murphy territory. But I'm going to go with Jared Verse. He's my edge one. Wouldn't shock me if this ends up being Dallas Turner, but this is a team that's been looking for that 10-plus a year sack dude at the edge spot. I think Verse is pretty solid value here at 8. Then we get to Chicago. This is where I'm going to have Rome Odunze come off the board. Whether, it's a Odunze going 5, and Neighbors falls here, I'm happy with it either way for both those teams. I think Odunze makes sense to the Chargers, and I think Neighbors would be a great addition, partnered up with DJ Moore in Chicago. So I think either way it plays out in this mock, it makes a ton of sense. I just have Neighbors at wide receiver 2, Odunze at wide receiver 3. Not to say those two guys, pretty much any other year that I've been, scouting, they would be wide receiver 1 in just about any other class that I've done, with the exception of the Jamar Chase class. Those guys are special. And then this big body, I've kind of described Rome Odunze as 6'3" Amari Cooper. You put that dude on the other side of DJ Moore, you kind of have the perfect complements to another. Big play, yards after the catch, deep threat in DJ Moore, win on the sideline, back shoulder specialist, win with physicality, a little bit more size, all that sort of stuff. Can win over the middle of the field. I think they're kind of the perfect complements to one another. And then maybe there's a world where you keep Darnell Mooney around just for one other big play. That, or I could totally see this team bringing in someone like it's definitely not a flashy name, but like a Nick Westbrook-Akina type, someone who's a pretty solid, who can be a third option, but more so is there to be a blocker. Like I could totally see them tapping into that well. Maybe a Jawan Jennings, pretty good blocker there from San Francisco. He's a free agent. I could see them tapping into that well for that third receiver spot if they do bring back Darnell Mooney. As promised, Brock Bowers is going to go in the top 10. And look, we're going to have to get through free agency first, but there's a world where Aaron Rodgers brings in more of his buddies, like a David Bakhtiari type, and then they re-sign Mekhi Becton, or they figure out another veteran tackle option. And they basically say, we're going to take care of tackle in a certainty market, right? Like, these guys have played in the league. I know what I'm getting. I'm not having to rely on a rookie. Like, let's go ahead and tap into a well of people we know what they look like on the NFL field. I could see where they do that, especially with Bakhtiari, potentially in play, and, Rodgers keeps all his buddies pretty close. And then you look at who's the number 2 pass catcher for the Jets right now? After Garrett Wilson, who is that number 2 pass catcher? Alan Lazard? He's not very good. Randall Cobb only is on a football team that, features Aaron Rodgers. Like, there's no other team that's willing to make that, roster spot his, So, yeah, you're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel for who that wide receiver 2 is, or, pass catcher 2. I think Brock Bowers is certainly an upgrade over the tight ends they currently have. They can also save a lot of money moving on from, the Conklin, who I know he's a great leader, he's a good locker room guy, but you move on from Conklin and Uzama, you save a good bit of money that then you can use that money in free agency to go land, a veteran tackle. Maybe even a Tyron Smith if Bakhtiari doesn't end up becoming available. Could see him wanting to go to New York for just 1 year. So I could see them, saving money at tight end, using it elsewhere, specifically at tackle, and then Brock Bowers slots in, and he's kind of that middle of the field weapon, solid blocker too, an extension of the run game, kind of a plus there as well. So kind of satisfying a lot of different needs here, making the roster as a whole a little bit better, but really trying to find that number 2 target for Aaron Rodgers. And where Wilson is on the outside, I really like the idea of adding Bowers to work between the hashes. All right, to the Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to go Dallas Turner here. And again, if Turner goes 8-2 Atlanta, I'm totally fine with Verse being the pick here at 11. It's totally interchangeable for me. But look, the Vikings have got to find like their next franchise cornerstone piece at edge. No guarantee Danielle Hunter's back next year. Even if he is, the idea of Turner plus Hunter, that's electrifying. Like, that's awesome. Like, that's a sick edge tandem for at least a year. But there's also a world where Davenport and Hunter are gone. And then you're kind of starting over from scratch. So no matter how you spin it, I think this is a huge need. I also think this is a good value. Whether it's Verse or Turner, like, you're getting... Let's say Danielle Hunter's not there. You're drafting your best edge rusher at 11, whether it's Verse or Turner. So I love it no matter what happens. And if Hunter's still there, it's just an awesome compliment, but also a long-term piece, because how long is Hunter going to be there in Minnesota? Corner's certainly in play. Cut up a couple other things. The quarterbacks are certainly here. And that is kind of the missing piece of this mock for Minnesota. No quarterback. So, that makes it a little tricky, because I also don't have Atlanta taking a quarterback. So... What I was saying earlier, okay, sorry, I kind of dropped the ball on this point. There's not a whole lot of things that, unify and get people like kind of all on the same page. There's not a whole lot of consensus out there, but no fan base wants Russell Wilson. It's amazing how we can't agree on much as Americans, or just like people in the world nowadays, but nobody wants Russell Wilson. No fan base wants him. And then like 90% of each and every fan base wants nothing to do with J.J. McCarthy. So it's just interesting how we can find little pockets of consensus. Sorry, I meant to say that earlier on. But look, let's be honest, like, Russell Wilson to Minnesota is certainly a live possibility. Russell Wilson to Atlanta could certainly be a live possibility. So I guess that's kind of what I'm resorting to here, because I don't have the Vikings taking a QB. I don't have the Falcons taking one. Kirk's in one spot, Russ is in the other. That's what we're going to kind of go off of in this mock draft, which I know that's going to piss off one of those two fan bases, because, like I said, we can't agree on much, but nobody wants Russell Wilson, including myself as a Steelers fan. I want nothing to do with it. Then we get to the Denver Broncos. They're here at 12. More of the same here. I think Bo Nix is going to be Sean Payton's guy. I hear him on the Kay Adams show saying, we haven't really started. Nah. If you've already made the decision Russell Wilson's not your guy, you can't tell me you haven't started to look. You can't tell me that. So I think Bo Nix is going to have those traits that he's looking for. Quick processor, good attacking underneath, mobility to kind of be a little bit more than what he had with Breeze and kind of what he wanted, Taysom Hill to kind of be in that offense, but never developed as a passer. I think Bo Nix is kind of the meshing of those two worlds. Then we get to the Raiders. This is where I'm going to have my top interior defensive linemen come off the board. Byron Murphy. I mean, for years now, I've been mocking IDL to the Raiders just because it's a spot they continue to ignore. But, man, this is a mean dude. I can totally see where he's like an Antonio Pierce type. I also think about, Patrick Graham, background with the Giants, with Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, a lot of those key cornerstone pieces on the inside, and how much that helped elevate that defense in New York. And I think he's doing a lot with a little there when it comes to just talent on that roster in Vegas outside of Max Crosby. And a couple of the pieces like a Nate Hobbs type. But you insert a Byron Murphy, that could be his disruptive, interior presence that makes Max Crosby that much more potent. Malcolm Kuntz has another, hopefully a full season of what we saw basically the second half of last year. I think Byron Murphy makes their jobs that much easier and also kind of gives Patrick Graham that inside presence that he hasn't really had with Vegas like he did with the Giants. So, and I think this is about the range. It's kind of hard to find a home sometimes for Byron Murphy. Even this team here at 14 kind of makes some sense to partner up with Brian Brzee. But I think he's a guy that's going to go somewhere between 8 and 15. And I just don't know exactly where that's going to be. But he's too good of a football player to venture into the back half of the second round. Let's get to the New Orleans Saints here at 14. I'm going to go Olu Fashanu. I just think in a world where they can get the best pass protector in this class, that would excite them a ton, especially if they didn't have to move up and get him. And, look, I've seen a lot of mocks, and now there's a couple big boards with Talise Fuaga over Olu Fashanu. Look, I've been on this Talise Fuaga, hype train pretty much since, I don't know, October, November. Totally on. He's a great football player. Right now, he's my OT3. Him and Tyler Guyton kind of battling out for that spot. But that being said, Fuaga was pretty awesome at the Senior Bowl. I think once we get to the Combine, the narrative's going to flip back to where it kind of originally was. Olu, this fluid mover. He's only 21 years old. He'll add some more strength. Yeah, the pieces are there. They just don't make him like him, and only have 2 years of starting experience that look as good as he does and moves as well as he does. While Fuaga's going to post average to above average numbers across the board. So I think once we get the athletic testing, this narrative's going to flip a little bit back to where it was beforehand. Olu at OT2, Fuaga probably OT3. So I'm going to kind of stick with that here versus where the trend is at this exact moment. But I think Olu, you draft him, plug and play left tackle, and then you move Trevor Penning over to the right side if Ryan Ramczyk hangs it up. If he doesn't, I'm intrigued by the idea of Penning playing guard because, this is a team with Andres Pete hitting free agency. So if Ramczyk comes back, Penning, with his kind of, run game, mauler type of mentality, he might be a better guard anyways. And also, he's a liability in pass protection, so that might be a better spot to kind of hide his weaknesses as well. Or if Ramczyk retires, even kind of just going off stereotypes, the run blocking specialist, kind of old school thinking would make you say, okay, that's probably a better spot for him to be at right tackle. So a couple different options that the Saints could go down here. But if Olu Fashanu falls in their lap at 14, I think they're going to be really, really happy with that selection. To the Indianapolis Colts at 15. This is where, maybe the biggest winner of the Senior Bowl, Quinyon Mitchell, is going to come off the board. Look, to me, it's a clear-cut top three. Darius Robinson, Quinyon Mitchell, Jackson Powers-Johnson, who is going to come off the board and literally this next pick. But it's not going to be the team that is currently here selecting him. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. But yeah, Quinyon Mitchell had one hell of a week, man. And for a guy where the main knock was, does he play a lot of man coverage? And also, what's this level of competition all about coming from Toledo? The Senior Bowl answered both those questions, and he did it with, passing colors. He crushed it. Not to say he won every rep. It's almost impossible to do that at corner, but showcased a ton of physicality, especially for a guy who's sub 200 pounds. Played with a lot of physicality, ton of play strength, really showcased what he could do there as a man coverage, man press even type of cornerback, and did it against much different competition than what he saw playing at Toledo. So you see ball skills, fluidity in zone coverage. Now you get to see what he does in one-on-one situations, man coverage. He's kind of moving up the board, and he's starting to, not that every corner, or Quinyon Mitchell even for that matter, is he can do everything. He's the jack of all trades. He'd be going to the top 5 if he was, but he's starting to become this really well-rounded piece. And I think with his size and, again, physicality, and also in a Gus Bradley defense, considering how much zone he did play at Toledo, I think this is a really nice landing spot for him and a really good fit for what we already know he does, and I think he's only elevated his stock post-Senior Bowl. All right, like I said, there is going to be a trade here. I'm going to have the Pittsburgh Steelers moving up to pick number 16. I don't have them giving up their third-round pick. Look, trust me, as a Steelers fan, I'm not really in love with the idea of forfeiting another top 100 asset when we have plenty of holes, but we're not doing the third round today, so let's just, go with it for this kind of exercise. And also, I think the Jags are a sneaky team for Jackson Powers-Johnson as well. Luke Fortner has not been a great center. They could definitely use an upgrade at one of the guard spots. And Jackson Powers-Johnson coming to the Senior Bowl weighing 334, the guy showed true guard flexibility there. So I'm going to have the Steelers draft JPJ. Another year with the draft of JPJ. That'd be kind of a fun storyline. But also, look, this is a team that, center's not the highest position value spot, but for Pittsburgh, like we kind of operate like a team that's still thinking like it was 20 years ago. And, Darmonte Johnson, right into Mike Webster, right into Marquise Pouncey. And then since then, we've kind of had that hole at center. And Mason Cole did not fill that void. So I think Jackson Powers-Johnson is the chance for the Steelers to draft that next great Steelers offensive lineman, interior offensive lineman in specific. And, as a Steelers fan, I'm like, super high on JPJ. I would love to see him be the guy the Steelers taking the second round. Oh my God. And I'm just like watching the Senior Bowl, watching him demolish these reps. And I stand by it. I don't think he lost a single rep in Mobile. I don't think he lost one. And I'm just having to kind of settle with and deal with the idea of, okay, well, if I want Jackson Powers-Johnson, it's going to have to be at pick 20. Well, you know what? Honestly, 20 might not be, but we might have to move up to get him. Because again, the Jags make a lot of sense. Seattle, if they decide not to go the route that I'm going to go with today, they could certainly be in play for a guard center upgrade. So there's a couple teams right there in the mid-teens that are like, ooh, they make a lot of sense for JPJ. The Steelers might have to move up the board, kind of like they did last year. In this case, we give up a third. Last year, they only gave up a fourth to move up those 3 spots in that trade with New England. So I don't know. If you're a Steelers fan, would you be willing to bite the bullet for that top 100 asset? Get that, potentially next like great Steelers center. Let's hopefully have that be the last piece of the offensive line that needs some work. That and maybe one more tackle spot, depending on what happens with Chukwuma Okorafor. So let me know if you're a Steelers fan. Would you be down for this JPJ trade up, or is it only someone you would consider if he made it to 20? Because I also get where you're coming from if that's your stance. Anyways, let's move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars now. I'm going to go Brian Thomas Jr. Look, he's just that big physical receiver they don't really have right now. And I'm also kind of questioning now if they're even going to bring back Calvin Ridley. Like, I could see a world where they're like, yeah, there were some big games in there, but also a lot of inconsistency, especially in the red zone. Like, kind of had some timely drops, balls that go right through his hands. Like, you just can't have those in that area. So I could see where they're looking to find a guy with better ball skills. I think better deep tracking ability, honestly. At least, I don't know. It's tough to say that because Calvin Ridley, pre-suspension, was fantastic as a deep threat and as a guy who could reel it in and track the football in. Post-suspension, we've only got the 1 year to look at. So I don't know. It's tough to say that. But Brian Thomas, one of his major skill sets coming out of LSU is that deep ball tracking ability, and also does it at 6'4". He could be that deep threat if this team does decide to move on from Calvin Ridley, which I'm finding to be more and more of a possibility. So let's go with Brian Thomas Jr. at 17. To the Cincinnati Bengals, this is like the hard floor for me with Talise Fuaga. I cannot see him getting past 18. Because like I said, he was great at the Senior Bowl. He really was. And now I think he's solidified like the Raiders at 13. That's like a spot that's pretty hard to pass on. And when I originally thought about this mock, I was like, I think that's where I'm going to have him go. So him or Byron Murphy, I'd be super excited about for the Raiders. But 13's kind of like almost the floor, but then 18 like hard floor. I just can't see the Bengals passing him up, making this tackle tandem of him and Orlando Brown Jr. To me, it makes all the sense in the world. And he could be a guy that even goes even higher. Like who's to rule out the Jets? Like especially if they do sign Tyron Smith, David Bakhtiari, you plug Fuaga there at 10, play right tackle. Could be a really appealing option there as well. So big winner out of the Senior Bowl and basically just solidified that, somewhere in that top 18 range. That's where Fuaga is going to come off the board. To the Rams, another one that just makes a ton of sense. I've done this plenty of times in previous mocks. Leatu Latu, just a polished NFL pass rusher. They have the explosive guy on the other side, Byron Murphy. Leatu Latu is going to win one-on-ones because he's a pass rushing technician, and he's going to see a lot of one-on-ones when number 99 there in the middle, garnering all the attention of that Rams defense. So this is a spot where, one, stays local, that's cool, but also a team that's, not really had a whole lot of first-round pick, hasn't had a first-round pick since the Jared Goff trade. So for them, I think they might have a little bit more comfortability, maybe taking the risk on Leatu Latu. This is not a spot in the draft they're used to drafting anyway, and if Leatu Latu stays healthy like he has the last 2 years at UCLA, I mean, you're drafting a guy who could easily hit the ground and collect 10 sacks his rookie year because he's NFL ready. And again, like he's not super special as an athlete, but that's kind of Byron Young on the other side. And when you have Aaron Donald, you're going to get one-on-ones. Leatu Latu, he eats up one-on-ones. Like this is the perfect spot for him to go. To the Seattle Seahawks, and yesterday I was like, do I really want to do this? Do I want to have Michael Penix go to Seattle? I like Michael Penix a ton, like kind of my QB 3B, with Daniels kind of being 3A. I love me some Michael Penix. And I was like, but Ryan Grubb is, taking that job at Alabama, so that kind of takes the winds out of the sails. And then right as I'm like, you know what, I'll still do it. I'll still put Penix going to Seattle. I could see where they're looking for that QB of the future. I'll do it. I see the headline popping on my phone that Grubb's going to Seattle. They poached him from Alabama. And I was like, oh my God, here we go. So I'm going to do it. Michael Penix to the Seattle Seahawks. Obviously the continuity with Grubb becoming the new Seahawks OC. That's appealing, but also at this point, Seattle, their financial obligations to Geno Smith were pretty much at the end of that. So who's that long-term piece? Now, do I love the idea of drafting the second oldest quarterback of that, big five, big six at the top of the class? So he sits a year behind Geno. No, I don't really love that. Ideally, like a JJ McCarthy is probably a better, more typical way of going about it, right? You start the veteran for one more year. The young guy needs one more year of experience. You let him sit on the bench, get that experience, and he becomes your starter. But the Giants take McCarthy off the board with that same thinking. So instead, they're going to take Michael Penix here. And you just, honestly, if he's better than Geno Smith, you just play him. It's just as simple as that. Because again, your obligations to Smith are pretty much at the end of the road now. So super interesting option. And also not only the grub continuity of that offense, but he needs to go to an offense where he has playmakers, because I totally get it. He's coming from a college where, you had Rome Odunze, you had Jalen McMillan, you had Jalen Polk, you had assets all around you. Well, Seattle, you have two good backs, a couple of nice tackles on the young side, figure out that interior offensive line, the O-line looks pretty good, and then you have DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Tyler Lockett, at least for another year, and we'll see what happens. But DK Metcalf, JSN for sure feel like long-term pieces in Seattle. So, he's stepping into a spot where he has pieces that it's not like he's throwing to scrubs, So I don't know. You're keeping the situation at a high enough floor to where I'm not worried about Penix, kind of shit in the bed. So I don't know. I like the situation a ton there for him going to Seattle, not only with Grubb, but those receivers, that offensive line. I think it's a good spot for him to be able to start and then, or get drafted and maybe start right away. Maybe he sits for a year. I don't know. But let me know if you're a Seahawks fan. Are you still in on this Penix idea at 20, or is it if he's there in the second round, we'll do it? I'd love to know your thoughts. Let's get to Miami here at 21. This is kind of where I'm starting to think the hard floor for Tyler Guyton is, after what he did at the Senior Bowl. And also this Teron Armstead, I haven't heard any more. He's kind of contemplating his future. If he doesn't come back, then tackle all of a sudden is a massive need for this team. But one way or another, I think Guyton can kind of fit in the mix because, look, Armstead's probably going to miss a couple games. You could plug Guyton in there or move Austin Jackson over the left side. Guyton then plays right tackle. He feels a little too big to play guard for me, but you could probably make it work, if you absolutely needed to. But yeah, if this is a third tackle contingency for Armstead, fine. If we find out Armstead's coming back, maybe you pivot and you look more Graham Barton, interior offensive line, Troy Fautano maybe as an option. But Tyler Guyton had one hell of a Senior Bowl. Only 1 year of starting experience at Oklahoma, but he looked pretty solid at pass protection, and you saw the movement skills. And I think there's an outside shot maybe he becomes OT3 off the board. I really do. If it's Alt, Olu, it wouldn't shock me if Guyton ends up being the third off the tackle, just because, if a team's got the risk appetite, they're willing to bank on the upside, Guyton's got a higher ceiling than Ataliese Fuaga does, in my opinion. So I could see a team maybe having the risk appetite to make him OT3 off the board. Then we get to pick number 22. Look, Eagles fans, I hear you. I can already hear the complaints that we don't need a corner. I couldn't disagree more. Darius Slay might have another year or two in him, but James Bradbury's washed. Avonte Maddox can't stay on the field. And that's why I think Terran Arnold's kind of the perfect guy. Inside-out flex, so if Maddox is missing time, I think that slot corner role has really been pivotal in Philadelphia, dating back to the full Super Bowl run. When they had Avonte Maddox on the field, he was playing some damn good football on the inside. So Terran Arnold could be that guy if Maddox is missing time, or you just play him on the outside where he did this last year as a redshirt sophomore in Alabama. So I think this guy gives you the flexibility that if Bradbury can't play on the outside, boom, you play Arnold there, or if Maddox is out and you feel like, hey, Eli Ricks can hold his own on the outside, or someone like that, then you move Arnold inside and kind of keep a strength there at the slot corner position. I kind of feel like Terran Arnold's the perfect corner Philly to target there in the 22 spot. Then the pick number 23, Houston. This is where I'm going to have Johnny Newton come off the board. He's just a guy I mocked a ton to Houston. I think the fit kind of makes itself clear. More pass rush juice, especially if this team keeps Jonathan Grenard. Then I think you can wait on edge, maybe find that third edge rusher in the mid rounds. But if they don't bring back Grenard, then this becomes kind of a Braylon Trice potential area. But I'm just going to go into the assumption they bring back Grenard. Now that we're looking to bolster that interior offensive line, get some more pass rush juice with Johnny Newton, but also shore up that run defense. Really like Johnny Newton as a fit in the middle of that D'Amico Ryans defense. To the Dallas Cowboys at 24. Yeah, a little bit of a projection, type of move here with Amarius Mims. Don't know if he'd even see the field right away. Depends on what happens with Teron Armstead. But I could see a world where Armstead plays one more year. Teron Armstead. Tyron Smith, getting my aging left tackles mixed up now. But if they bring back Tyron Smith for one more year, keep Tyler Smith at left guard, you could play Amarius Mims at right tackle. Look, Terrence Steele wasn't very good last year. Or you hope Steele has a bounce back and you just draft and develop Amarius Mims. Kind of like a slower curve than what you did with Tyler Smith, where you needed him to play right away. But, Mims kind of has that upside, he's toolsy, tradesy type of offensive lineman, just like Tyler Smith coming out of Tulsa. So this could be another one of those kind of projects they're willing to take on, and they might not even need to have him on the field right away, depending on how they feel about Steele at right tackle and if they get back Tyron Smith to play left tackle. Green Bay, Cooper DeJean. I think DeJean should go way higher than 25. He's my top slot corner in this year's class. And he may ultimately play on the outside. Like, I'd be fine with that idea as well. I just prioritize slot a little bit more than outside. And Green Bay is just going to have to overhaul the secondary. I don't think Jair is going to be back. If I had to make an assumption right now, I think Jair Alexander is going to be someone they move on from, and he'll sign a one-year deal, prove-it contract with some team that's, contender-ish, or he'll go chase a ring. Like, he'll go find a playoff team, basically, to sign a one-year contract with. DeJean could be his replacement, or he could be an upgrade in the slot. I'm fine with it either way. Or, honestly, maybe he plays safety. All that is on the table for Cooper DeJean. Just get him into camp, see where he's best, and there's a spot open for him in Green Bay's secondary. To Tampa Bay at 26, this is where I'm going to have Troy Fautano come off the board. Matt Filer just wasn't it at left guard. I think you can get a clear upgrade. And maybe this is a Graham Barton spot too, but I'm deciding to go Fautano here and play him at left guard. Could be Graham Barton, just had Ryan Jensen retire, and maybe Robert Hainsey's a better guard than he is a center. But either way, I think they're going to give Cody Mock another year to figure out what he is at right guard. It's that left guard center spot that I'm kind of intrigued by. I wonder where they think Hainsey's better. Is he a better center or is he a better guard? That might dictate their decision here. Because if they think he's better at guard, they'll probably go Graham Barton. If they think he's better at center, they'll go Troy Fautano like I am here at 26. To the Cardinals at 27, I'm going to have Nate Wiggins come off the board. A little bit of a slide. I think a lot of people have seen him as outside corner 1, depending, again, where you see DeJean playing. And I would agree he's my outside CB1 because I see DeJean as a slot. But you know what? I just kind of thought about this, and I was like, if Garrett Williams didn't get hurt at Syracuse last year, would he not have had a lot of the same narrative and kind of rhetoric around him? A guy who got better year over year at Syracuse, ACC school, even the colors, similar enough, but enough size. Williams a little bit smaller, a little bit more slight build, I think, but a really solid athlete. And again, the year-over-year progression getting better and better. That's the type of developmental curve you want to tap into. It feels like Garrett Williams, if he didn't get hurt against Notre Dame in last year's draft, or before last year's draft, he might have had this same kind of build and upwards progression for Nate Wiggins. Don't know if he'd come off the board quite as high as I've seen Wiggins come off the board in a handful of mocks, but who knows, because that injury obviously derailed a lot of his stock. So just kind of thought of it as an interesting experiment. This could be the chance for, if Wiggins slips a little bit, the Cardinals to add another, corner that's very similar to what they already have with Garrett Williams, but maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit higher upside. But I don't know. I just felt like it could be a really nice pairing there and have two similar guys playing on the outside. Buffalo Bills at 28. Look, I am Josh Allen's my favorite player in the league. He's the number one player in my 2018 draft board. One of my crowning draft achievements in a young career for sure. But look, I'll say it, hand up, like there is no quarterback who throws more fuck it balls, YOLO balls than Josh Allen, and who better to have him throw it towards than probably the guy with the best jump ball contested catchability in this class. Him or A.D. Mitchell, just because they're both freak athletes, can go up and high point the football. Keon Coleman with that basketball background, you can see the box out, kind of in his background. I think this is the play here. You're going to move on from Gabe Davis. I just wouldn't pay him, right? When I could draft a Keon Coleman here at 28 and just kind of reset that rookie contract window at receiver, save a lot of money. But I also think, he hasn't shown a lot of yards after the catchability, but at 6'4", 210, 215, he can't be a joy to bring down. Even if it's just him putting his shoulder down and kind of being an extension of the run game, where we saw Buffalo pivot to, we want to look underneath and then we'll progress deep down the field, versus when Ken Dorsey was there, they wanted to look deep and settle for a check down. That little bit of a philosophical switch, I kind of feel like Coleman's a better fit for than what they've used Gabe Davis for, or haven't used Gabe Davis for. They just haven't used him as a yak weapon. I think Keon Coleman's just a tank, so just throw him a little bubble screen, let a corner try to tackle 6'4", 215, and let's see where it goes. I bet she falls forward and gets at least 6. So I think he could be a little bit more of what they're looking for with this Joe Brady offense, while also being the perfect, Josh Allen just threw it up in the air. God forbid. Please let Keon Coleman be the guy down there, because maybe there's a chance he comes down with it. Kind of feel like this is a perfect match made in heaven. Gonna have to develop his route running though for sure. Detroit Lions, let's go with Ennis Rakestraw Jr. Physical corner, kind of feels like a good fit for that culture and that physicality and just kind of the team mindset. This team also needs to make an investment there at outside corner. The 40 time is going to be interesting, and you could certainly go Kool-Aid McKinstry here. Both these guys are going to, ultimately whoever has the faster 40 might go, earlier than the other one, just because of how this process works. But Kool-Aid, Ennis, they're both guys that are looking for a good 40 time to boost their stock. Kool-Aid does have the 3 years of starting experience at Alabama, so that's certainly appealing here. But I feel like Rakestraw is making some good progress, and he might be a smidge faster. Also, I think Rakestraw comes with inside-out versatility, which isn't the biggest need for Detroit because I assume Brian Branch is going to play in the slot. But nevertheless, more versatility is never a bad thing. So let's go with Rakestraw. You know what? I'm going to pivot here at the last second. I'm going to go Kool-Aid McKinstry. We'll just have Rakestraw go where I had Kool-Aid originally going. But I'm going to go Kool-Aid McKinstry. The reason I make that last second swap, Cam Sutton's kind of small. Like Cam Sutton, 5'10". Do you really want to put another like sub 6 foot corner in that room? Let's go ahead and get a little bit more size and length. Let's go Kool-Aid McKinstry. He's kind of the perfect man coverage corner that if Aaron Glenn has his way, he wants to run man press, and I think Kool-Aid McKinstry gives him the horses to run that race. Pick number 30. I mean, I'm just going to hop on the bandwagon here. You know, I still see Darius Robinson is more of a second round guy. But that being said, good Lord, can I find him? Is he an edge here? He is kind of a hard guy to pass on here when you're looking at the Ravens. He's totally their type. Play on the edge, early downs, kick inside on those passing situations. And they might lose Justin Madubuike, and they might keep him. You know, like either way, he's either a solid like passing situation, you kick him inside, you get some of that same production you're going to lose with Madubuike. Or if you keep him around, then you have a great 1-2 punch on the inside. But yeah, he kind of feels like a Raven player. And with his arm length and his size, man, this is a guy that truly can play all three downs. So I'll hop on the bandwagon and say, yep, he'll go to the Ravens at pick number 30. Here at 31, I'm going to go Ladd McConkey to the Kansas City Chiefs. You know, like I said earlier, like I think the Chargers need to use Quentin Johnston the same way the Chiefs started to use Rashee Rice this year. Yards after the catch weapon, just engineer easy pitch and catch, and then, you know, kind of let him be a good athlete. They're leaning on him a little bit more as a separator, but you know who's a truly great separator? Ladd McConkey, and you saw that at the Senior Bowl. He's not just like your prototypical small slot, you know, white guy. He'll probably run low 4.4s, like upper 4.3s to low 4.4 range. Like I would probably say 4.42 would be my guess right now. While also running an awesome 3-cone, I will assume he does that, and just being more of that, you know, shifty separator against man coverage. So I think Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce, those can be your yards after the catch, find the soft spot in zone coverage. Ladd McConkey becomes your man beater. And then you just, you know, maybe you bring back a Marquez Valdes-Scantling, maybe you bring in a Calvin Ridley as that MVS type, that deep threat. And I think let's just say it's Calvin Ridley. You sign Calvin Ridley, you have Ladd McConkey play the slot, Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce. All of a sudden, it feels like you have a good amount of pass catching weapons around Patrick Mahomes. Then we get to the San Francisco 49ers. This is where I'm going to have Ennis Rakestraw Jr., I guess, come off the board. This team definitely could use another upgrade at corner. And, you know, with Rakestraw and Kool-Aid, I think they're both interesting fits for San Francisco. This year, their pass rush is a little bit more good than great, I'd say. But more often than not, we associate a great pass rush with this San Francisco defense, right? And, you know, with long speed being a concern for Kool-Aid and Ennis, like this could be the perfect place, right? Where, you know, if San Francisco gets back to being one of the top 5 pass rushing units in the league, top 8 in the NFL, you worry a little bit less about that long speed because the pass rush generally is going to get home. So I actually kind of feel like Kool-Aid, Ennis, this is kind of the perfect place for them to go. And they could use one more starting outside corner to kind of raise the floor of that defense. Charvarius Ward's a stud, and some of the other guys are okay, but I think they can aim for a little bit better than okay. All right, second round, I have taken way too long, so sorry. This is going to be a little bit more of a speedy second round here. We start with Jalen Polk going to the Carolina Panthers. This is one where I think Ladd McConkey makes a ton of sense for sure because it's just like an upgraded version of the ghost that is Adam Thielen. Great fantasy story, but watch the film. Like, he just got a ton of production because he was the only one they could somewhat count on. And you know, Ladd McConkey almost feels like the restarting of that, you know, Adam Thielen window. But I've also comped Jalen Polk 1,000 times to Chris Godwin, and I stand by it. I think that's one of my favorite comps that I have in this class. And I don't do a whole lot of comps, but Jalen Polk, I see a ton of Chris Godwin. And who is now the head coach and play caller for this Carolina Panthers offense? Dave Canales, coming from Tampa Bay. And I think there's a world where they sign Mike Evans, 3 years, $70 million contract, 3 years, $75 million contract for Mike Evans, and then they draft Jalen Polk to be that Chris Godwin type. And Dave Canales basically kind of brings those pieces over to try to elevate Bryce Young. I think it makes a ton of sense, so I like that fit a ton. Here at 34, this one I have A.D. Mitchell come off the board. Just a guy that, I mean, Devontae Parker plays with good size, but A.D. Mitchell, I think, gives you that with plus vertical ability, you know, just a little bit more, you know, bounce in a step, while also being much more of a deep threat. Devontae Parker is kind of your old school possession type. Mitchell has that size while also being a great deep threat. And he gives you kind of 3 to 5 routes a week on his tape where you're like, oh my God, this guy totally could be a plus level route runner at the NFL level. It's inconsistent, but I think there's talent to work with. So you draft Jaden Daniels, you draft potential wide receiver 1 A.D. Mitchell. Let's turn this offense around in New England. And then here at 35, man, I love this fit. I haven't had this happen yet because I haven't had Latham get out of the first round. But look, if we're going to talk about the Cardinals, maybe they go offensive tackle with their first round pick. Like, don't rule that out. They could do it at 27 for sure. Like, if Awaga's there, if Tyler Guyton's there, if Latham is their target there at 27, all makes sense because Humphries is hurt. Ideally, we'd have Paris Johnson Jr. playing left tackle, but that right tackle spot's now an opening. But here, Latham makes it to the second round, plug and play right tackle option, and now I'm looking at him plus Paris Johnson Jr. I'm feeling great about that. And it feels like Kyler Murray's going to have a really clean pocket to be able to do a lot of cool things with. And with his mobility, like, he extends plays already. So, yeah, I like this a ton. Latham falling in their lap at 35. I haven't really drafted a lot of tackles in these Cardinals mock drafts, but really glad I can make it happen this time around. Here at 36, look, this is a pick that I think Washington would be happy to make for sure. But I think with Chicago, I was like, man, they just got this pick 44 from the Vegas Raiders in that Justin Fields trade. And then we're going to just throw in one of the fourth rounders. Let's just say wrong team giving up a fourth round pick. Let's just say pick 110, force the trade. And shoot, it thinks I'm trying to select a player. Force the trade. Boom. Here we go. The Bears are here, and this is where I'm going to have Chop Robinson come off the board. He might be a little light compared to what Bears fans are looking for, maybe out of that edge. And I get that, 250, but I think he could easily get up to 260 and still be an uber explosive athlete. Like, I'm not really worried about that. I think he eventually could kind of convert into that 4.3 end body. But even if he's, a little bit lighter, you have Montez Sweat on the other side. He's like 270. So if you have one edge at 250, one edge at 270, it bounces out. You have two edge, basically, an average weight of 260. I think it's fine. And also, Chop Robinson's a solid run defender. Like, just don't worry about the weight. Like, he plays to run just fine. I think he'd be okay in a 4-3 defense, but you're just putting more prioritization into that, defensive end spot. You make the Montez Sweat trade, but he's not the most explosive athlete. He's just like a really well-rounded player. I mean, he is a good athlete, but his athletic kind of, I don't want to say phenomenon, but like, lack of a better phrase, the thing that made him a really intriguing kind of athletic prospect and kind of a project play coming to Mississippi State was his size and his length, more so than like get off. Chop Robinson, it's the get off, dude. Like, it's that burst in the line of scrimmage. It's the ability to dip and tuck underneath offensive linemen, attacking the outside shoulder. Like, there's a ton of upside just from the speed and the bend alone. He's just got to develop as a pass rusher. And who better than Montez Sweat, who really developed way faster as a pass rusher than anybody really saw coming out of Mississippi State. So, love the idea of Chop Robinson's athleticism paired up with Montez Sweat on the other side, just further putting these assets into that edge spot. And basically, the Bears, flip Justin Fields into a second-round pick, and they've used 2 second-round picks on Montez Sweat and Chop Robinson. And all of a sudden, that edge, duo looks pretty solid in Chicago, where, 12 months ago, looked like a big problem spot, and they were signing Yannick Ngakoue right before the season just because it was like, well, he's better than who we have right now. So, it feels like they've come a long way. Then we get here at 37. Actually, I made a mistake, so that really sucks. Shoot, what do I want to do here? Sorry for the live gaff, everybody. That was supposed to be Washington making that pick, and it was supposed to be the Chargers trading down, so let's just go back and act like that didn't happen, blah, blah, blah. Sorry about that, everybody. Pick 44, 37, and then they're just going to get back that same Chicago thing. So let's just act like that didn't happen. Sorry about that, everybody. Chop Robinson to the Bears, and then I was going to have Washington stick and pick and take Braylon Trice. It was just going to be Trice and Robinson back-to-back. So it still ultimately plays out, and I still have the Chargers move back to 44. The Chargers could use another near top 100 asset. They get pick 110 out of it. They have a lot of holes to fill. I think Harbaugh would be like, cool, give me another player I can add to this roster. Washington needs edge rusher after trading, Montez Sweat, who we just talked about, and Chase Young. I think Braylon Trice, really solid value, whether it's Chop or Trice. I think Chop comes with a little bit more upside. Trice probably a little bit more pro-ready right now, turning that speed to power. It could make sense for either side. I could totally see where Braylon Trice maybe has the body type Chicago prioritizes. If you're a Bears fan, let me know who your preference is. The upside of Robinson, or do you think Trice is more of the fit for the Matt Eberflus defense? And if you think it should be the other way around, then just imagine a mock where Trice is the pick to Chicago, and then Chop goes to Washington. I think both sides would be very, very happy with that. Let's move past my stupidity, because I can't believe I did that. Pick number 38, Troy Franklin, to the Tennessee Titans. Could be that deep threat, but also another nice extension to the run game, yards after the catch ability, just like Treylon Burks, but a very different body type to kind of bring down, while again, being that field stretcher. And this is a team that it wouldn't shock me with Brian Callahan coming over if he signs, Tyler Boyd in free agency, but I could also see where they just use Kyle Phillips as that slot, Tyler Boyd type of player. So one way or another, they kind of have that underneath option from the slot. They have Treylon Burks, who can't stretch the field, but let's use him as an extension to the run game, yards after the catch. Let's just use him and what he was supposed to be, kind of that A.J. Brown replacement. Use him underneath, use him on those slants, let him be a bowling ball, and then let's let Troy Franklin be that combination of deep threat speed, but also slippery with the ball in his hands. To the Giants at 39, that's where I'm going to have Graham Barton finally come off the board. You could easily, like I said earlier, flip Graham Barton and Troy Fautano. I would love it either way for the Giants. And here I'm imagining whether it's Fautano or Graham Barton, that's your left guard. You know, I'm going to be really curious to see what the Giants think about Evan Neal. Like, do they want to give him one more year at right tackle? Or are they just like, yeah, let's just move him inside to guard? Like, I'm going to be really fascinated to see how willing they are to make a decision on him. Like, I feel like they might give him another year there at tackle, just to see. You know, give him the year 3 opportunity. And like, look, I know Andrew Thomas broke out year 2. A lot of times, tackles break out year 3, year 4. So Thomas kind of breaks the mold there. Maybe this is the breakout season for Evan Neal. If you're a Giants fan, and this is how the board plays out, you would certainly hope that that's the case, because Graham Barton, I think, is going to be playing guard at the NFL level, or even center. Like, I could see where he plays center and they kick someone over to play guard. Maybe that's the case here for the Giants. All right, back to the Washington Commanders. I've made this pick a ton, so I won't elaborate on it a ton. But Patrick Paul, I think an NFL-ready pass rusher, didn't look great at the Senior Bowl, but I think you saw the long arms. You kind of saw the... If you liked Patrick Paul, the Senior Bowl kind of only affirmed how you feel about him. If you're a little iffy on him, kind of like myself, you only had your thoughts affirmed. It was just basically confirmation bias for Patrick Paul at the Senior Bowl. Either you saw, yeah, he's not the most impressive athlete, or you saw, got a ton of pass blocking sets under his belt. He's NFL ready, and those arms are just like as big an asset you can have for a left tackle. If depending on how you feel for however you feel about Patrick Paul, you basically just got what you wanted to see out of the Senior Bowl. It was just confirmation. So I'm not as high on him, but I do think for Washington, they're ready to move on from Charles Leno. I think that's like maybe the most hated player in that fan base right now. So let's go ahead and find a replacement there, and I can see Patrick Paul checking a lot of their boxes. To Green Bay at 41. Yes, we already went with a secondary player and Cooper DeJean, but I'm going to have DeJean play the slot, and then I'm going to have TJ Tampa play on the outside, and we're just adding a ton of length and athleticism to this secondary, which is like, oh, now I wish I could keep Jair Alexander around, right? But TJ Tampa, solid size corner, man zone flexibility. Wish there was a little bit more man press under his belt at Iowa State, but when he has done it, he has looked pretty good, and I think he's going to be a guy that, I don't want to say tears up the combine, but post some impressive numbers, will be kind of one of those slight winners to regular winners versus like breakout winners. You know, I think he'll be considered a winner, but not like, oh my God, he stole the show at Indy, if that makes sense. To the Minnesota Vikings here at 42. Let's go back to the corner room. Kamari Lassiter, kind of the same stuff. I think he'll post pretty well, you know, pretty good numbers at the combine. Kind of like Keely Ringo. It's like, you know, Keely Ringo didn't win Indianapolis. He didn't win the combine, but he was a winner. Granted, didn't help his draft stock that much, but I think Lassiter, as long as he's more than 180, like the 180 figure is kind of questionable to me, because I'm like, he looks like he's about 6'1.5", like, feels like he should be in that 190 spot, kind of like Nate Wiggins. So I'm going to be interested to see what he weighs in at, but I just look at, you know, Byron Murphy, okay, and I think Josh Metellus will probably be their slot, so okay, you're playing Murphy on the outside. Can you do better than a Caleb Evans? I think it can, and I think Kamari Lassiter could be that upgrade to that number 2 corner spot. Pick 43. I'm going to give the Atlanta Falcons a wide receiver here and Ricky Pearsall. Look, he was the solid winner at the Senior Bowl. You saw the contested catchability, you saw size, you saw long speed, all those things. Think about Alec Pierce, a lot of the things that people got themselves sold on with Alec Pierce. Ricky Pearsall brings that, but the reason I think he was a big winner at the Senior Bowl, he showcased way more suddenness in and out of his breaks. Something that we've really never seen from Alec Pierce. He showed the ability to grow as a route runner, and also he had a handful of really nice one-on-one reps, one as a route runner, which is not something I expected to say about Ricky Pearsall going into the Senior Bowl. I thought he'd win with physical traits, right? Size and speed. Not with his route running, but he already showcased a little bit of that at the Senior Bowl. I think there's room for him to grow as a route runner. I think that number 2 wide receiver spot's I think Falcons fans understand it's a need, but I think outside of Atlanta fans, it's not being talked about enough. And I think you partner him up, his long speed, to go along with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and the Zach Robinson offense, could be fireworks. Let's get to the Chargers here at 44. And part of the reason I wanted to have them trade back, even though I totally fumbled the bag there, is because I'm having a draft running back. I think they're going to let Austin Eckler walk. This team has, you know, a tough salary cap to navigate, and spending on running back is not going to help you get through that. You trade down, you get pick 110, so it's just outside the top 100, and then Jim Harbaugh drafts his college back, you know, and Blake Corum. Decent amount of wear and tear on the tires, like he definitely has a lot of reps. You know, that was kind of the downside of him going back to play one more year at Michigan. More, you know, kind of wear and tear against him. But dude, just a bowling ball running between the tackles, great vision, great contact balance. He feels like a Jim Harbaugh type of, especially when this is the best quarterback that Harbaugh's had at the NFL level. This is the best quarterback he's gotten to coach in Justin Herbert. That feels like his priority on offense, is we're going to win through Justin Herbert. So Blake Corum's kind of the perfect guy of like, yeah, he's not going to break off any 50-yard runs, but He's not going to fumble it either. Has great vision. Always going to hit the right hole. And he'll, when we hand it off, more often than not, pick up 4 or 5 yards. And he'll just keep the offense ahead of the chain. So I kind of feel like he's the perfect back if Harbaugh's truly buying into Justin Herbert and saying, he's a superstar. He's going to be our offense. Corum's just going to be the kind of little bit of change of pace, I guess you could say. And the guy who's going to keep us ahead of the chains and be able to give Herbert a rep or two to kind of give his mind a little bit of a break. Feels like the perfect guy. And obviously the Harbaugh-Michigan connection makes a ton of sense there as well. To the New Orleans Saints here at 45. I'm going to go Xavier Legette. Not a great day one at the Senior Bowl, but I think he bounced back just fine, and that kind of avoided the potential Tez Walker, big time fall at the Senior Bowl. And look, Michael Thomas is going to be gone. Xavier Legette's, we've all, I think I see a little bit more A.J. Brown than I do DK Metcalf, but that type of route tree, that type of physicality, makes a ton of sense that he would be your Michael Thomas replacement. He just doesn't have quite the size. Thomas 6'2 and a half or so. Legette unfortunately comes in at 6'1". So another year we had these receivers all of a sudden shrinking 2 inches, in height and about 10, 15, 20 pounds in size once they get to the Senior Bowl or the Combine. So school's really kind of hurting these guys' draft stocks because ultimately all that's going to do is push them down the board. Anyways, another topic for another time. But Xavier Legette as that Michael Thomas replacement, I like it a ton. Might see him more as a late second rounder than I do as a mid second rounder, but I think the fit here makes a lot of sense and maybe it's worthwhile at 45. To the Colts at 46, I'm going to go with Chris Braswell. Solid showing, kind of another one of these players where if you liked Braswell going to the Senior Bowl, you saw the upside, you saw speed to power, and you saw enough of what you wanted to see to kind of buy in even more. And if you're not as crazy about him and you're like, yeah, he does speed to power, but everything else is kind of like meh, you just got that confirmed at the Senior Bowl. So another one of these guys where it's just kind of confirmation bias, but nonetheless, good athlete, and really speed to power is the one thing I don't think that edge group has right now in Indianapolis. So feels like a nice compliment to Deo Dangbo and Kwity Paye, some of those guys that are already there in Indianapolis. To the New York Giants, I think we need to have more second-round conversations around my guy, Javon Baker. Look, a little late to the party on Baker, but 6'1.5", a little bit, just under 6'2", very quick on that first step. And look, receivers a big need for the Giants here. And I just look at the opportunity. You don't have to draft Rome Odunze at 6, and that's kind of what I wanted to bring to the table here was like, there's a possibility where they draft a Daniel Jones air replacement, and then still get a physical, big body, contested catch receiver that they just don't have. Baker at UCF won about 56% of his contested catch opportunities. Again, showcased good first step ability as he, kind of got off the line of scrimmage, avoided a lot of press and a lot of jams in his one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl. Also looked really fluid in the red zone. Looked like a sharp route runner. And really, old school thinking in the red zone is like, I want a big guy. He'll win in the air. Really, like, what wins in the red zone, look at Devontae Adams, is separation. Can you get open in a tight spot? Can you win in a phone booth? I think Baker kind of gives you a nice blend of both those because, again, first step athleticism, first step quickness, plus solid route running ability, and his size, he's kind of that jack of all trades. And again, he's just the receiver the New York Giants don't have. So wanted to bring a different opportunity here or different, kind of draft haul to the table here for the Giants. So if you're a Giants fan, let me know. JJ McCarthy, Javon Baker, are you liking it, or you just want to do Rome Odunze and then someone else in the second round? Let me know your preference. Let's get to the Jags here at 48. This round of Jonah Ellis come off the board. They just need one more edge rusher in the mix. I'm intrigued to see what Trayvon Walker develops into. Maybe he has that year 3 leap as a pass rusher. I think they're going to have to at least tag Josh Allen. Hopefully they get that long-term extension figured out. But Jonah Ellis is that third fiddle in the mix, gets that pass rush back to where it was a couple years ago. Then we get to the Bengals at 49. I'm going to have Tavondre Sweat be the selection here. If memory serves, DJ Reader is a free agent. And even if he's not, look at the on-off splits with DJ Reader, not on the field. Just last season. You don't even need to go further than that. His on-off splits last year for Cincy were telling. So I think Tavondre Sweat is that DJ Reader replacement or as that DJ Reader contingency if they bring him back. Or if he is not a free agent and I'm wrong. It makes a ton of sense in the world, especially if maybe Sweat doesn't play a full workload. If he's just a compliment to DJ Reader and you always have that body type on the field, cool. You're keeping a strength no matter what. Or if Reader is a free agent and I'm remembering that correctly, this is how you replace him for cheap at pick number 49. Then we get to Philly at pick 50. I'm going to go Kingsley Suamataia. He's just, this toolsy, tradesy upside off the tackle that I really like coming out of BYU. 6'8", really good movement skills. Plays a little high, but I think you can fix that. So I just want to see him go to one of these franchises that just knocks out of the park year over year at developing edge trench talent, really in general. Offensive line, defensive line. This is the Eagles' calling card here. So I'm kind of fingers crossed. Someone who likes Suamataia. Like the idea of him going to Philadelphia and potentially hitting his upside. He played right guard for a little bit at BYU before playing left tackle, so I could see where Ultimately, you flip him back to the right side, and he becomes that Lane Johnson replacement. Then we get to the Rams here at 51. Winner from the Shrine Bowl, not a guy I've gotten to talk about yet, but Renardo Green, a guy who year over year Florida State kept getting better and better and better. Solid size, 6 foot 190, kind of modern build. I won't say prototypical. Maybe you want a little bit more height, but kind of your modern build for a corner. And good athleticism, and again, looked really solid at the Shrine Bowl. Showcased that this guy should probably be somewhere in the first 2 rounds of play. Maybe venturing a little bit in the 3rd round, but somewhere he's a top 75 player. And the Rams definitely need an upgraded outside corner. So Renardo Green feels like a good solid athlete to add the outside there in that Rams secondary. Pittsburgh Steelers here at 52. Apparently they talked a ton with Adrian Cooper, and that makes a ton of sense to me. Like high upside, athletic, long-arm corner. Look, this is the team that, had 2/3 of the Edmonds players. The one they didn't have was Tremaine, the one that I've been comping Adrian Cooper to, so it feels like kind of the lost opportunity they never got, bringing in all 3 Edmonds brothers. But Adrian Cooper, could be their investment at the linebacker position, because you got Holcomb coming back, you got a Landon Roberts, but Holcomb's okay. Roberts old, plays the run well, but you're looking for a long-term piece. Cooper, the only downside about this for the Steelers is like Cooper may take 2, 3, 4 years. Like Edmonds, granted, Edmonds was drafted at 19 years old, but it took him 4 or 5 years to fully break out. Like Cooper is still a little raw, really only has 1 really good year of tape at Texas A&M. It might take him 2 to 3 years before he becomes a true impact player at linebacker, but nevertheless, it's been 2 or 3 years, basically since Ryan Shazier's scary injury, that inside linebacker has been a major hole for the Steelers. So I could see where, center, linebacker, it's not a sexy draft for the Steelers, but it kind of fits with their identity. It kind of old school Pittsburgh thinking, but they're definitely positions where they can certainly get better. So if you're a Steelers fan like myself, is this like a draft you're down for, or is it like, what? 2 positions of low position value? I don't want that. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Miami Dolphins at pick number 53. Going back to the well here. I think JT Sanders is going to go top 2 rounds. Look, I know it wasn't the most flashy year at Texas, but he looked good at the Shrine Bowl. Awesome mover, like super athletic guy. I think JT Sanders is going to be a top 2 round pick. And I've said this 1,000 times. This is about as close as Mike McDaniel is going to get to drafting a George Kittle type with that athleticism, solid blocker, truly a weapon in the pass game. Like, this is as close as he's going to get, in my opinion. Then we get to the Philadelphia Eagles again at 54. Probably not a Howie Roseman type of move, but nevertheless, it'd be a move that they'd be wise to make. Just like maybe they don't go corner in the first round, just because Roseman hasn't typically done that. Doesn't mean that, you shouldn't change a little bit and adapt, kind of like, Jet fans telling me 2 years ago, no way we draft a corner. Sauce Gardner's the pick at 4. Seahawks fans last year, no way we take a corner, especially a small one. Well, Devon Witherspoon, pick number 5. So please, sometimes it's worth, breaking your mold. Not every draft is the same. You can't always have the same approach. So corner at 22, linebacker here at 54. Look, Vic Fangio coming as your DC. He's always needed some good linebacker play. I like Nakobe Dean, but I think there's an upgrade spot, or a chance to upgrade the spot next to him. And I think Peyton Wilson is the best right now NFL caliber linebacker in this class. So I think the Eagles would be wise to add a piece that makes them that much more of a contender right away. All right, let's get to the Cleveland Browns at 55. Really like the idea of Xavier Worthy being that extra receiver piece, that long speed, a little bit more. I think they wanted Mitchell Schwartz to be that deep threat, but he just never developed as a receiver. So you plug Xavier Worthy into that. Yes, drops are a little bit of an issue, but hey, if he gets behind the defense, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And he opens up the middle of the field for Amari Cooper and David Njoku. Then you still have Elijah Moore, who can be a field-stretching slot, but also a yards after the catch weapon. And then hopefully another year of development for Cedric Tillman makes him a kind of possession plus type of guy. So I don't think he's stepping on anybody's toes here, and that's kind of what I like about the fit with Xavier Worthy. And with his long speed, he's probably going to go somewhere in the first 2 rounds. To the Cowboys at pick 56, I was kind of questioning. I was like, let's do something a little different. I want to get 2 linebackers, and I want to get 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds. And, ultimately kind of worked out with the Chargers taking Corum. Jonathan Brooks can be my another mock where I take him in the 2nd round for the Cowboys. Texas team doctor is the same one that the Cowboys have. So if there's a team that knows where Jonathan Brooks is right now with his health, it's the Dallas Cowboys. So I can totally see where he is their in-between tackles guy, and then they bring back Tony Pollard to be that outside the tackles and receiving back threat. It makes for a really nice 1-2 punch there. And Dallas has a pretty well-rounded roster, so if there's a team that can take a running back in the 2nd round, they're one of the ones that I can give a pass to. Back to the Green Bay Packers at 57. I'm going to go Dominic Pooney. He is listed here as a tackle, but I do imagine him playing on the inside. Looked pretty good at both guard spots, even took some snaps at center at the Senior Bowl, so he could be your Josh Myers replacement, who ultimately hasn't been as good, certainly not as good as Creed Humphrey, who was taken 2 picks after Josh Myers. A little bit of a miss there for Green Bay, but also he could just be a guard. Like, I could see where you play Pooney at left guard, you move Elton Jenkins back to right guard, and you just get Runyon out of the mix. And all of a sudden, if Walker backs up what he put down towards the end of the season, Zach Tom continues to play good football, all of a sudden that offensive line looking pretty solid in Green Bay once again. Tampa Bay at 58. That's where I'm going to go Adisa Isaac. I just think a solid football player. And another one of these guys at the Senior Bowl that if you like the athleticism, you like the speed, you like the bend, you liked what you saw at the Senior Bowl. But if you're someone who's like, yeah, what is he going to do against the run? Feels like he might be a little light. You probably saw more of that at the Senior Bowl. So again, confirmation bias guy here for sure. But I just think you have George Ryan-Shank, who's kind of that well-built edge. I think you can pass and go a little bit lighter here with Adisa Isaac and just get a really solid pass rusher who can win with that speed and that bend to complement Ryan-Shank on the other side. I think this is, I'm trying to get the Tampa Bay pass rush back to where it was in 2019 when they won the Super Bowl with Brady. Was it 2019, 2020, whatever year it was? Whenever the Bucs won the Super Bowl, that pass rush was killer with Shaq Barrett kind of at the peak of his powers. I think adding Adisa Isaac as a complement to Ryan-Shank plus Kalijah Cansey being an awesome first rounder last year, trying to get that pass rush back up to where it was a few years ago. Then we get to Houston at 59. Look, I thought about this pick for the Chiefs in the first round, but I'm going to go Roman Wilson. Look, yeah, you got Bobby Trees. I guess he could come back to play, slot receiver. You got John Mechie there for sure. I just think Roman Wilson might be the better version of both those guys and just a clean separator against man coverage. You have a little bit of that. Nico Collins, Tank Dell's an awesome threat for sure. Those guys can both stretch the field, and Roman Wilson can too. Like, I could totally see where Roman Wilson ultimately becomes a Tyler Lockett type. He can play on the outside, has enough long speed, will probably run somewhere in the low 4.4s. Like, he could totally be a Lockett type. But I also think he could just be slot, pure separator, and I think Tank Dell, Nico Collins can be man beaters, but Roman Wilson's just one more guy to add in the mix. Also solid yards after the catch guy too. So a lot of different ways where Bobby Slowick can use this guy. Totally could be Malachi Corley. I could see where Corley's more of that Deebo Samuel type, where maybe that's where Slowick wants to go. He's a different type of receiver for sure. But I just think right now, I think Roman Wilson's a better receiver right now than Malachi Corley is. But Corley, you might be able to do a little bit more with. So, I don't know. Give and take there for sure. Buffalo Bills at pick number 60. I'm going to go Marshawn Kneeland. Really interesting body type, like 6'3", 275. Good first step quickness, too. So, has a lot of those tools and traits that, previous, Bill selections have had, like a Greg Rousseau, like a Boogie Basham. He's kind of checking a lot of these boxes. And ultimately, look, Von Miller was a healthy scratch multiple times down the stretch last year. Like, that's going to be a guy they move on from. So I think edge is going to be a need. So hopefully Marshawn Kneeland, a little bit of a toolsy, traitsy guy, but hey, 6'3", 275, that first step, if he can be an impact player opposite of Greg Rousseau, like trying to get this Bills pass rush to a point where it was, I don't know, right when Von Miller first got there, it looked like that pass rush was going to be a major issue for everyone playing Buffalo. And if that becomes a serious strength for Buffalo, that's where this team can maybe get to the Super Bowl. I feel like they're missing piece, like an elite pass rush. And maybe Marshawn Kneeland could be the guy that puts him over the hump. And maybe he's just another guy in the rotation. And ultimately, it's that deep rotation, kind of like Philadelphia, that puts him over the top too. Detroit here at 61. I'm going to go back to the edge group. Honestly, in retrospect, I kind of wish I flipped these guys. Sorry, Lions fans. I should have flipped these two. Because Booker, a little bit on the slider side. He's 6'6", 245. So, he should be a guy who's 6'6", 255, 260. And if he gets to that 255, 260 mark, I think he can play early downs. Because you already have, James Houston, who's, a little bit on the smaller side, 6'1", probably a deep yard specialist. I don't love the idea of drafting another guy who might end up being the same thing. So sorry, Lions fans, I should have switched these, but I guess I wasn't thinking about it. Kneeland, Booker, either one of these guys makes sense. I think both these teams need one more pass rusher. For the Bills, it might be, again, just one more guy in the rotation that keeps everybody fresh, and that's ultimately going to put us over the top. And for the Lions, it's one more guy that's not named Aleem McNeil or Aiden Hutchinson. That's what makes our pass rush super scary week in and week out. So you can flip these guys. I wouldn't be mad about it. Honestly, I kind of wish I did. 3 more picks to talk about. Let's get to the Baltimore Ravens at 62. I'm going to go Trey Benson. Just kind of another swing of the bat at a J.K. Dobbins type. Big playability, really solid receiver. Again, just kind of feels like a way to replace J.K. Dobbins. Pick 63, I'm going to go Christian Jones, offensive tackle out of Texas. You could go Jordan Morgan, but wasn't a great Senior Bowl. And honestly, a lot of guys, feels like now people are being like, yeah, maybe he's a guard. I think he'd be fine at tackle, but I'm starting to hear a little bit more of that than it was before the Senior Bowl. Let's go Christian Jones. Looked way more athletic than I anticipated. Looked way more polished as a pass protector than I anticipated as well coming out of Texas. And really was a guy that, kind of hand up, wasn't I didn't really see as a first 3-round type of dude, so I haven't really put a whole lot of effort into scouting him. But I think after the Senior Bowl and what I saw there, I was like, yeah, this guy's going to go somewhere top 75. And obviously, 1-year contract for Donovan Smith. Christian Jones might be the Chiefs' pathway to replacing Donovan Smith. San Francisco here at 64. It's going to be a pick I made 1,000 times, and this is another guy that definitely should go in the first 2 rounds. Christian Haynes, to me, absolutely worthy of going somewhere there in the top 64. Let's go ahead and scroll through, but last final thoughts there on Christian Haynes. He's just the perfect fit for Kyle Shanahan's offense, and whether he's playing left guard or right guard, he looked really solid at the Senior Bowl at both those positions. I would say play him at left guard, replace Aaron Banks. Never really made sense for him to be in that Shanahan scheme. I think that's a clear major upgrade for San Francisco. And also, if he plays left guard, that means Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, and company are running left side behind Trent Williams and Christian Haynes, who looked awesome at the Senior Bowl. That sounds awesome if you're a 49ers fan. But guys, let me know what you think about this 2-round NFL mock draft, the last one before we get to the Super Bowl. So also let me know your thoughts on the Super Bowl, like who you taking, Chiefs or 49ers. I am rooting for San Francisco just because I like Shanahan a ton, but I have already put down multiple bets on Chiefs moneyline just because, man, the value's too good to go against Patrick Mahomes. But let me know your Super Bowl picks, but of course, let me know your thoughts on this mock draft down below. Who's your favorite team, and did you like the picks I gave your squad? Would love to know your thoughts, and I'm going to try to respond to every comment that I can down below in the comments section. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hit that like button if you did. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and want to see more mock drafts like this. But until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.